So if you only have 4, I think. Oh no, Sam's at 5. Sorry. Yep.
Wait, do we have quorum in here? We do.
You have a quorum in here, and you have another, so you have 5. So you don't.
Okay, good?
Yep.
We got it.
All
All right.
set.
Welcome, everybody, to the July 13th, 2022 regular meeting of the Conservation Commission. First order of business is approval of the June 8th, 2022 minutes. Anybody want to make a motion? Yes, Allison.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes, except I had a question. So in the section about the Master and Restaurants, Inc. owner, the statement was made that the existing wetland buffer setback is about 1 foot from the back edge of the existing pavement, and I thought that the actual edge of wet was about 1 foot from the back pavement. Is that not correct?
Which question? Which?
This is the first application on the agenda from last month.
70,
Is that the common man? road?
255, yeah.
2255 Lafayette.
And the question was what? If they.
It says that the existing wetland buffer setback is 1 foot from the back edge of the existing pavement, but that's not true.
The wetland, yeah. No, you're
The
right.
wetland
Yep.
is. Yeah,
Yep.
so that needs to change.
Where is that?
That's on page 2, at the, about the 5th line down from the top, 4th line.
Great. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any others?
Good catch.
No, I think that's it.
Anybody else? Samantha, okay? If you, I don't see her on your thing, so.
Oh, sorry. All set, Samantha?
Anybody
Yep. She
Wanna-
gave you a thumbs up.
second that, please?
Oh, I'll second
But we,
that.
Do you have something else?
bottom, last paragraph on page 4, and it's something that I said, so that it caught my eye even more. So, no outstanding copyright editing, thank you. Ms. Gindel questioned if the deck on the corner was new and questioned if it would be lit. I thought I was probably talking about the little round thing?
You mean the patio?
Patio?
Yeah, the patio, but does anybody, I mean, if it's, I don't care.
You want to change deck to patio?
I don't know, does anybody have a better memory than
I kind of do
Yeah.
remember that you said patio.
Okay, that's what I thought,
Right.
because I was concerned that there'd be more light
Down
at
by
the,
water.
at the edge of the water.
Okay, so we'll change deck to patio.
Okay. Anything else? Seconded by Jessica, thank you. We're going to do a roll call vote, so all those in favor, Sam,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
and Abby,
Yes.
and Allison?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Second item on the agenda is the Wetlands Conditional Use Permit, Old Business, 70 Pleasant Point Drive. Is anybody here to speak to that?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Corey Caldwell of TF Moran. And just a point of question, I noticed we were first and last on the agenda.
Yep.
And is it okay to take those two together?
We're going to.
Yeah, we got to just make a motion after you finish the first one to move the other one up, but that was our plan, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Joining me today is Rebecca Rowe of Katara LLC, the owner. We have Ben Ogier of Ogier Building Company. Eric Burke, our landscape architect with terrain planning and design, and Joshua Buckus with DeStefano Magal Architects, and Jason Cook, a project engineer with TF Moran. Peter, on our thumb drive, there's a bunch of drawings. Could you bring up the color drawing, please?
Oh, you don't want the slideshow? Okay.
Not the slideshow, but prior to that slideshow, there's some drawings, and one of them is colored. And it would be nice to reference that if we could bring that up. We presented this project last month. You may recall at the June 8th Conservation Commission meeting.
Site plan color?
Yes. Since this meeting last month, we've submitted revised plans to address this commission's concerns. We've had a joint site walk with the planning board and this commission. We've had a site walk and meeting with DES staff, and we've submitted a standard dredge and fill wetlands permit application for tidal buffer zone impact and the proposed dock. During last month's meeting, this commission recommended several improvements. First, the use of eco-grass and slow-release fertilizer. This change is shown on the landscaping plan. In the lower right-hand corner of that landscaping plan, there's a note, and that note reads that install eco lawn grass seed by Wildflower Farm or approved equal, and slow-release fertilizer on all lawn areas within 50 foot of the reference line. And that's sheet L-01 of the landscaping plan.
Something's wrong with it. It won't let me copy it on the desktop, and it won't open.
Not finding it?
No, I find it, but when I try to open it, it doesn't open, and when I try to copy the desktop, it says I can't find it. But it's right here.
There may be another plan in there that we could reference as well, if that one won't open. Maybe it's too large. While Peter's looking for that, the second comment that this commission issued last month was to reference NOFA standards on the plan. And this is done in the same note on that landscaping plan. The last half of that note, again in the lower right-hand corner, reads that NOFA standards for organic land care, 6th edition 2017 or most recent version shall be followed during lawn care.
But it's there.
Asked us to provide less lawn, more trees and plantings in the buffer. This change has been accomplished, and we've submitted a revised landscaping plan. Additional plantings have been shown in the northwest and southwest portions of the site, as well as additional plantings surrounding the permeable patio. These plantings result in less lawn and over what exists today, and less lawn than what was presented last month. Fourth, we were asked to move the small sitting patio further away from the water. You may recall this is that round feature that shows on the plan that was approximately 18 feet from the water. This was at the top of the slope, and then the patio behind it contained a retaining wall, and the edge of that retaining wall was approximately 15 feet from mean high water. The patio's been moved 5 feet to the north. It's now 23 feet away from the mean high water, and we removed the retaining wall on the back and replaced that retaining wall with a bunch of plantings. This colored plan that's up there doesn't show the plantings because those are shown on the landscape plan. But if you refer to the landscape plan, you can see the retaining wall behind the patio removed and the addition of plantings behind that patio to provide more buffer between the patio and the resource. And lastly, you've asked us to show mulch rings around the oak trees. These are the two large red oak trees that we observed during our site walk. The existing mulch bed around these two trees will remain intact. The outline of these mulch beds is shown on the landscape plan. And lastly, during our site walk, it was asked that if we could quantify the changes to the 50 and the 100-foot buffer and the house impact changes, if you will, to the 50 and the 100-foot buffer. And we've done that. And you may recall we pointed out at the site walk that the house is moving back approximately 20 feet. And much of the house currently is within that 50-foot buffer. There's about 313 square feet of house in the 50-foot buffer. That is being reduced down to 0. There is no house impact in the 50-foot buffer currently. Between the 50 and 100-foot buffer, there is it's about 1,200 square feet of impact, and that, as a result of moving the house further away from the water, is being increased by about between 800 and 900 square feet to 2,100 square feet of impact. So although house impact is increased in the 50 to 100-foot buffer, it's eliminated in the 0 to 50-foot buffer. Overall impact from the site remains the same. We're considering lawn area impact as well as grading. So what impact you have in that 100-foot buffer now remains the same as it will post-construction. In addition to revising our plan set to reflect these changes, as part of the DES wetlands permit application, we've submitted 7 additional plans. And I won't go into those till we formally allowed that, but that portion concludes the conditional use permit and the changes we've made as a result of the site walk and our last meeting. If okay, I will proceed with the wetlands permit application.
I think we're good. I
Wait,
don't have any
you
questions.
wanted to proceed with it now? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
We should vote on the first one, I think,
Okay,
at this point.
right,
At least discuss it.
sure.
That's all right. with everybody?
Myself and my team, happy to address any questions.
Okay,
Thank
any
you.
questions? Yes, Jen.
I'm not, maybe this is part of the wetlands application, but in this packet, you talk a lot about the fill treks that you're talking about doing on
Silt
the
sock?
shoreline.
Yep.
Do you know what type of mesh you're gonna be using? I know that they have different options. Some are organic, but they do have a polypropylene and a polyethylene one, and that would be concerning to me if there's a bunch of plastic mesh sitting right there on the river's edge.
Yeah, I believe that's addressed on our sediment and erosion control plans, and it does reference organic fill.
Okay. And that would include the mesh from that particular product?
That's a good question. Does it include the mesh? I don't remember reading that. I just remember seeing organic fill. There's no plastic. We typically spec the organic mesh,
Okay.
the coconut fibers or,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
That's our typical reference on a erosion sediment control plan. Without reading every note, I can't say directly, but I'm
I was trying to see if I could find it too, but.
There's a lot of words on
Yeah,
there.
there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Any more?
That was my,
I had a couple.
Yes.
So I had one, just sort of suggestion and then a question. Well, actually, they're both questions, but I note that you're going to fold down burlap and cages around the root balls, and I have found personally that it can really restrict the tree growth. And I would like to see those removed if possible, rather than just tucking them. And then the second thing was, I was just questioning how well the live staking is going to work, given the drought situation that we're having.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Eric, our landscape architect, here, referencing his plan, I'd ask him to address that question.
I'll address the second one first. The live staking is based on timing of installation, and you know, all of the plant material is going to need to be watered during establishment. So, just like the rest of the landscape installation around the house and closer to the driveway, it's going to need to be watered, and that'll be a part of our maintenance program that we write for the project. And then you brought up a highly contested issue in the horticulture industry. We typically recommend 2/3 of the basket and burlap be removed because we've seen more damage to the root ball during the process of removal, as well as it makes it easier to get the plant material in place. So I would counter that I have not seen, if done removed properly, I have not seen an adverse condition if a portion of the basket is left on.
Okay, I have. And if you just roll the root ball, you can pull it out, but that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question, but it's a house, not landscaping.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys want to swap. During the site walk, you guys didn't know, or the engineer there didn't know the pitch of the roof and how high the stories are for each, the first and second story. Are they 8-foot ceilings, 9-foot, 10-foot, 7? And what kind of roof will be there and what pitch? 12 over 12, 10 over?
We'll have Josh, our architect, address that
Any
question.
of that?
Did you see these plans?
Yeah, that doesn't give me the numbers that I wanted, though.
Okay.
But, thank you. I did go through those. Just a quick,
I apologize. I can pop out and pull this up and grab the information. We didn't prepare that because we weren't aware that Conservation Commission was looking at that. for the
Well,
purposes of
height of
this
buildings,
discussion.
that's just, but.
So we know that we design to the site requirements, but I'd have to step out for a quick minute and grab that information for you if you like.
It's all right, I don't know if it's a deal breaker, I was just curious as to
All right.
if that had been settled on, so.
Okay.
Thank you. Others? No? I had a question for Corey again, on the, so I'm sorry about this, I can't remember, were the stairs, I thought the stairs going down to the water were going to be taken out.
No, and
Okay.
we completed a little research on that and found just yesterday that the stairs received a variance, Conservation Commission and Planning Board approval in 2008. They replaced what was a stone dirt walkway path going down, but they are put in pursuant to valid permits.
So,
It's our intent to have them remain.
okay, so was the original plan to take them out for us, the previous one? Or
No.
No?
No, they
okay.
were never proposed to be removed.
Okay. My other question on this is on the plantings, I think. Well, I had the same question that Jess had about the Filtrex Grow Socks and what it is, because it says biodegradable. And then there's also, I think, photodegradable or whatever. So, but that definitely doesn't tell you whether or not there's plastic in there or not. So that's, I had the same
Do
concern.
you have a note there, Barbara, that you're reading that I can?
I went online.
Oh, I was just, do you have, if it was a note from my plan in front of you that you were reading
Okay.
from that talked about the biodegradable silt sock? Because I know we address it on our erosion control plan. The problem is most of that plan is words and notes, and it might take a while to find it, but we typically spec.
Okay, so just,
Always spec
make sure that's in there.
biodegradable silt sock, not the plastic.
Point of clarification, I think there's two sock
Right.
mediums in play here. I think there's the grow socks, which will be used for live staking as needed. Those are certainly a biodegradable material.
Right.
Then I think there's the erosion control methods.
Right.
Which
You need to speak into the microphone a little bit more.
sorry.
Sorry, yeah, which Mr. Ogier just informed us that his company uses the biodegradable as a part of their site work operations on every project. So both socks will be biodegradable.
Okay, that's great. So as follow-up, maybe a little bit to that was one of the questions or one of the conditions maybe that the staff had put in here, the city had put in there, referencing how much information you have about the living shoreline, because there is a lot of information in there, but we don't know exactly what you're going to do, I don't think.
Yeah, so we're not proposing a new living shoreline as part of this application. We visited that, I visited that about three or 4 years ago on this site with the previous owner who wanted to do a living shoreline. Had a brief meeting out there with Peter, and we determined that the site, because of its sitting on ledge, because of its armor by the shore, that it wasn't a very good candidate for living shoreline. However, we are planning to enhance the buffer through a number of native plantings as well as invasive species management. So the shoreline, the 0 to 25-foot buffer would be significantly enhanced because of step one, we'd go in, remove those invasive species, and then on the edge, as you can see from the landscaping plan on the top edge, once you come up the slope, there are a lot more plantings and a less lawn post-construction than what exists today pre-construction. So those were our proposed improvements to the buffer. It will be living in the sense that it's all vegetated from 0 to 20 feet, almost 25 feet. But we're not proposing to change that slope. It's just going to be natural. I guess it's living in a sense, but it's going to be what's there for plantings, coupled with the new plantings, minus a lot of the invasive species. And we did submit an invasive species management plan, I believe, and the landscaping plan demonstrates the plantings that are going into the buffer.
Does that address your?
I can speak to that if you want. Yeah, I mean, I think I appreciate what Corey had to say, and I don't think we were looking for a new living shoreline project out there. I agree. I don't think it's the perfect candidate for that, but we just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that section in the ordinance and that we address it when we have an opportunity. And I do think that the restoration plantings they're proposing kind of go towards that, so.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
all the pages in the document that were submitted were like about it, and I was sort of like, this doesn't seem germane to the project, so I was kind of, so thank you for asking that question.
Because it is a section in our ordinance to, in a shoreline situation, to do living shoreline where appropriate. And that just,
Yeah.
what they're doing, I think, is appropriate.
Yeah. Yes, Lynn.
In terms of the like invasive species removal, I was wondering if you had any sense of like the percentage of cover there that is composed of invasive species? Like what kind of removal extent are you doing?
Sure. Eric, can you address that?
So they're dabbled along the entirety of the shorefront, but it's not it's certainly not an overgrown invasive situation, and that's why it's sort of more a spot and check and not a complete, come in and dig everything out and then replant it. So the idea is to let some of the native stuff that's there now kind of get promoted once it's losing the competition with the invasives, and then where we can add in more native material that will be more successful there. The reason for the grow socks and more towards that living shoreline is in zones where we don't have enough depth for soil coverage because of ledge or steepness of slope, not wanting to disrupt more soil than we need to. That's where we're providing a medium for plant material growth with the grow socks.
Right. And specifically just the, like I noticed there was like some woody stuff, like sumac and some smaller
Yep.
oaks. Are those staying? I mean, sometimes people see those as kind of weedy situations if you're concerned about like their growth and the view. Like, are you going to leave those two plants in particular?
The staghorn sumac is planned to be left at this
Okay,
point.
cool.
And what was the second
I
one?
thought there were some oaks as well, some young oaks.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, those would all stay.
those two huge oaks aren't going to be there forever, so perpetuating something that will eventually take place makes a lot of sense.
Nice. So it sounds like a real light touch with the invasive removal.
That's the plan, yep. More surgical than, a big backhoe in there.
Yeah, yes.
The removal, and maybe it's somewhere in here, and I apologize if it is. Are you going to weed it or dig it up as opposed to using any kind of chemicals?
So a majority of the stuff that's there now is smaller than 1 inch, so I feel confident that it can be pulled successfully without a lot of disruption. There may be a few things that are, once they get into it, that are larger than that, and that what we have recommended is a cut and dab method for those. But that is a very small percentage of what's there, and then again, even a smaller percentage of the entirety of the shorefront.
Thank you.
Thanks. And just while you're up here too,
Sure.
we had another question from the city about 1 year monitoring, 2 year, really looking at 2 year and 80%
Yep.
survival.
Yeah, so we do that as a part of our maintenance program or for the project, and we'll submit reports as needed to address any of those concerns.
Okay, so that'll be changed to that. And then is there sort of a opportunity for this to be, a maintenance plan to be put into like the deed or whatever for follow-up for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of, the owners certainly want to be as good as stewards as possible for the property, so I think, this stuff will be maintained in perpetuity, so.
Right, yeah. And the same with the rain garden especially.
Yeah,
That's
certainly.
always a huge issue.
Yep.
Okay.
And DES has requirements as a part of their approvals too for some of those upkeeps, so.
Okay, great. Anything else? Nothing from Samantha?
Nothing from Samantha that I see. No hand raised.
Okay. Any, no other questions? Anybody want to make a motion? I hate sitting up here. Yes, Allison.
I make a motion that we recommend approval of the conditional use permit for 70 Pleasant Point Drive.
Were we doing any
Make a
discussion?
stipulation.
Or did we skip? We were just going right to voting. I'm sorry to interrupt.
We'll have a
After
motion
we-
and then
And then we do
second
the
it.
discussion? Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
I will second that with, can we put a condition on there just to make sure that the grow socks are an organic biodegradable material and not any plastic-based product?
That sound good, Allison?
Yes.
Okay, Allison says yes. Seconded with one condition. Discussion?
This is not necessarily directed towards them, but just because we are recently out there, I would love in the future if, and I don't know how this works, but if we could start to talk about construction waste and reuse, just having the privilege to go to that site. There's that beautiful little shed that they're going to remove. but I'm sure someone would love, the gutters look like they needed to be clean, but we're in good shape, so it's sad to think that all that stuff is just gonna be, and maybe it's not, I don't know your intention, but.
I actually talked to the contractor about reutilization of materials that were still in good shape, and he said that they do that routinely.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because I would just like that to be something on people's radar as we get projects in the future, that's being thought of and considered instead of just all that good stuff getting wasted. So I'm glad to hear that you're already doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, really good point. Others?
Lynn, did you have
I
something?
do have a question, just, I'm kind of curious about people's opinions about invasive removal in this particular situation where it is going to cause a lot of bank stabilization and it's already, it's in a neighborhood, right? It's a pretty developed area. I'm just curious about kind of the pros and cons and how the Conservation Commission sort of views that and whether that's a requirement that, how to think about the pros and cons there.
Well, I think that as in the process of removing the invasive species, they could destabilize. And I think it's at such a slope that, it could erode very quickly. And so I think the stabilization for that site, at any rate, is necessary. That's my personal opinion.
But do they need to remove invasives at all, I guess is the question I'm
I
asking.
think so, because if you look at, like Oriental bittersweet, the birds eat the seeds and just drop it everywhere, and if you cut it out, they don't have seeds to drop. So I think that certainly there are some. It was nice to hear that he's not removing the sumac, but, there are other things out there that are not good, so.
Yeah, and there's a little bit on that with the living shoreline too. It's like a lot of the invasives, but even some of the larger plants shade out plants that are going to stabilize, like lower growth plants. So, so there's like a sort of a catch-22, How do you? So it's a really good question on how to handle that.
Yeah, and the Oriental bittersweet will kill everything, trees and strangle everything.
Pros and cons.
Yeah.
And in the past, sometimes we're like, and Allison, you sort of recommended this as like when they're like, oh, we're going to take out all the Norway maple, and it's sort of like, okay, wait a minute, the larger trees.
So we can be nuanced in our recommendations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it sounds like in this case, the consensus is
That's why it's kind of nice to know what they plan to do, rather than just
Okay.
we're going to take out the invasive species. On that note, I was hoping maybe that there'll be an opportunity for before and after pictures of this one. There's maybe an educational component that the homeowner would like to share with others later on, because it would be interesting to see how it does kind of come back when this is happening, so. How it works.
And looking at the staff note, do you think that we need to stipulate the 80% survival and year monitoring? Because if we do, then that should be added to the
I think it would be
motion.
nice. It's a nice, report back on it too. It gives us a sense of how the site's doing and gives us, a reminder that they did this work on this site for other sites to see when we see them in the future, how they worked. So
Okay.
I think it's a good.
So do we have to,
add a report back to us on it, basically?
okay.
Commission or staff, either one, in
Okay.
terms of reporting back.
To amend the motion?
Maybe amend the motion to add a second stipulation beyond the organic biodegradable socks.
Right, so that was one stipulation, and then the second one was that there be monitoring and maintaining of buffer plantings for at least 80% survival, and report back to the staff or the commission regarding how things went.
Do you want to second that?
I will second that, yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Any
Can
other?
I
Yes.
bring up one other question? Just given that the site, right, has got so much grass, so close to the water's edge, I mean, anything that gets put on that grass is going to wash right into the water. I know in the past we've recommended, the NOFA standards. Is this something we can do again in this
He's already
case?
signed, that's
Okay,
already
that's
in the
already-
plans. The NOFA, EcoGrass, low nitrogen fertilizer.
And our regulations don't allow herbicides or pesticides within the buffer and only slow-release nitrogen or phosphate.
So that's all. Thank you.
So, but it's good to bring up.
Yeah.
remind people. Okay, anything else? Samantha's good. And
Samantha's
okay,
good.
So we're going to go to vote. All those in
Oh, you want to do a roll call?
favor?
Want
Yeah.
to do it?
Yeah.
Samantha?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Abigail?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion passes. You guys are all set? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Part
I'll
two.
make a motion to move forward the standard dredge and fill application for 70 Pleasant Point Drive.
Take it out of order. Second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? I
Yes.
guess we got to do the roll call.
Oh, a roll call, I guess. Sorry. Samantha?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Abigail? Allison?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes. I'm going to recuse myself for this one, so Samantha's going to take the helm or whatever. So, go ahead, Samantha.
Corey, did you have anything else to present for the standard dredge and fill part?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Peter, if you could bring up that slideshow. Actually, before we did that, there's submitted on there, there's like 6 or 7 exhibits that we prepared as part of the wetlands dredge and fill application. And those are the plans entitled, at the lower right-hand corner, EX01 through EX07, which are on that thumb drive. Could we bring those plans up, please?
EX01 to EX07, I don't see that. I see site renovation plan, stairs approval, updated existing conditions, landscape.
Yeah, it's in the lower right-hand corner of it. It says, I have EX04 through 7, I think. Oh, no, there's one, yeah.
Within the site renovation plans folder, I believe.
It's site development plans, yeah, EX01. It's page 156 of our packet.
Again, my apparent challenge with the updated existing conditions plan? I don't, in which
Site
folder?
development plans.
Site development plans isn't in here.
Thank you.
So are you talking about in the packet then? I can go
Yes.
there. Packet, let's see.
Page 156.
Oops.
While he's looking for that, briefly state that we have submitted a standard dredge and fill wetlands permit application for this site. There are 7 additional plans contained in that application, and just going to briefly take you through those 7 plans, and then we've prepared a quick slideshow of the wetlands permit application, and which gives an overview of this site. There they are, Peter. Thank you.
Yep.
The first plan within that wetlands permit application is entitled a wetlands classification map. This plan is required of DES, and it simply classifies as the different types of wetland adjacent to the property. There are 4 different types of wetlands, therefore 4 different classifications of wetlands here. The description of each type is located in the upper right-hand corner. You can see there's some salt marsh that has a different classification than the water body, and then based on what's growing and the quality of that wetland and the tidal flats, there's 4 different classifications of wetland. The second plan is a wetland impact plan that is shown as sheet EX02. This plan quantifies total buffer zone impact. The orange area represents the permanent impact. Total permanent impact is 11,993 square feet. The red hatched area represents temporary impact, and that's about 3,750 square feet. All impacts, whether temporary or permanent, with exception of the dock, are within previously developed uplands of the tidal buffer zone. The dock impact from mean high water out to the end of the float represents about 886 square feet of impact. The third sheet, labeled EX03, is a shoreland impact plan. This plan demonstrates those impacts beyond 100 feet, the 100-foot tidal buffer zone. Anything beyond this buffer and within 250 feet requires a separate shoreline permit. Impacts proposed within jurisdictional areas of the Shoreline Water Quality Protection Act are a small portion of the home, the driveway, portion of the retaining wall around the driveway, and yard grading. Permanent shoreline impacts are about 1,200 square feet, and temporary shoreline impacts are about 3,633 square feet. EX04 is a vulnerability assessment. This plan demonstrates the site's vulnerability to relative sea level rise and projected mean and mean high water elevations. The plan view on the left of this plan depicts the current location of the mean tide line, the mean high water, and the mean high water with reference to this site. The plan view on the right depicts the same three lines for the year 2100. Because the site's elevation is steep, it's elevated, and it has banks adjacent to the resource, the site has a very high degree of tolerance for flood risk, and no action is required. Sheets 5, 6, and 7 are dock-related plans. Sheet 5 depicts the dock location with reference to the site, the mean tide line, the mean high water, and the mean high water. This plan also provides the dimension of the pier, the gangway, and the float. The right side of this plan depicts the proposed dock in relationship to the existing and proposed dock across the back channel of the river on Lady Isle. Commission members may recall, I think it was 3, maybe 4 months ago, was before this commission permitting that dock on Lady Isle, which is just across the back channel. So on the right-hand inset, it shows the entire resource from bank to bank and its relationship to that dock that was recently permitted a few months ago. Sheet 6 provides the dock details, a cross-section. It provides construction notes for the contractor, who will be, we believe, Riverside and Pickering Marine, and a profile depicting the dock with the mean tide line, the mean high water, and the mean high water elevations below. The elevations shown here are as they exist today, where sheet 7 depicts the dock with reference to those three lines, mean tide line, mean high water, and mean high water, as projected for the year 2100. Don't want to go through the entire wetlands permit. However, we have prepared some slides that summarize the application. If we could bring up those slides, please, Peter. I'll take you briefly through those. And that is this document.
Cory.
Sorry, I'm, okay, how do we,
I just had a question.
Sure.
So the pier and gangway will be taken off site to be stored?
Yeah, it has to come out. The dock and pier and gangway has to come out. The only thing that remains is the gangway and float has to come out. The only thing that remains is the pier. Yes, that's correct.
And it's going to be stored off site?
I don't think there's room on site. Becky, it'll be stored off site? Yes, be stored off site.
Thank you.
Thank you. If we could go to the first slide within that. It's an aerial image of the site. It shows the red arrow represents the site. The purpose of this slide is to show the site, the adjacent homes, and the tidal water body, which is the back channel of the Piscataqua River. If we go to the next slide, it zooms in a little closer. It's an aerial image which shows a closer view of the property. Here you can see the property, the adjacent salt marsh that we witnessed on the site walk, and the rocky beach adjacent to the property. And if you remember, that rocky beach and salt marsh really is what gave us the location of this dock. We didn't want to impact that salt marsh. We wanted to move it over with some buffer to the salt marsh. So that line, that dock is going approximately 30 feet within that rocky beach area to avoid impacts to the salt marsh. The next slide shows an image of the site a little closer and at low tide. This gives us an idea of the extent of the mud flats adjacent to the property. At low tide, you can't quite walk across this back channel, but I've spent a lot of time in this back channel topoing it for the work we did on the island, and it's there's a small channel right in the middle there. It's relatively very narrow at low tide. Next slide, please, which shows the property from the right-of-way of Pleasant Point Drive, public right-of-way that provides the access, and the next two slides show some pictures to help jog your memory from the site walk. It's just demonstrating that the house, patio, dock are all within that 100-foot tidal buffer zone. The next slide, please. As part of the DES wetland application, we're required to screen the site for priority resource areas per the DES wetland rules. If we could go to the next slide, this shows the 2017 eelgrass data. These are the beds of the eelgrass within the area. The site is referenced by the red arrow, and you can see the lime green eelgrass beds, and you can see that the eelgrass beds are not close to this site. The next slide shows the eelgrass beds a little larger, which is encouraging. That means these beds are growing, but still our site has no impact to these eelgrass beds, nor will the dock that we're proposing have any impact, because they are quite a distance away. This site is, there is a data layer required by DES that requires us to look and determine the prevalence of shellfish. They are in the area. However, next slide, please. You can see that this site, or this water body, is closed to shellfishing. Although they're in this adjacent resource, there is no shellfishing allowed in that back channel of the Piscataqua River. The next slide shows the salt marsh data. This represents the salt marsh in the area, which was also observed at our site walk. You can see that thin band in front of the home, which expands quite a bit as we go eastward. And the next slide is this is the UNH SLAM model. Those of you not familiar with the SLAM model, it's a sea level affecting marshes model, which was done by the University of New Hampshire. And this slide shows with 1.5 feet of sea level rise, there is no effect really on that salt marsh to this site. The next slide shows the SLAM model with 3 feet of sea level rise. And again, because of these steep banks going down, there is very little salt marsh migration proposed adjacent to this site. There is salt marsh migration, I think, with sea level rise on the outskirts, but not adjacent to this site because of its steep banks and higher elevation. One thing I'm not sure we noted previously, but the property to the west, and then just to the west of that, there is a prime wetland. And that prime wetland has a 100-foot buffer. That 100-foot buffer does extend onto this site. However, the only thing we're proposing in it, it's in the northwest corner, and the only thing we're proposing in it is some plantings and invasive species management. There is no impact other than plantings on the site within that 100-foot buffer. The purpose of this slide was just to demonstrate there is a prime wetland buffer there, but we're not going into it other than plantings and invasive species management. The next slide demonstrates the New Hampshire Fish and Game highest ranked habitat in New Hampshire, and that's the pink area. While high-ranking habitat is nearby in the adjacent water body and salt marsh, it is not on the subject property. The next slide is part of the wetlands application. We're required to do a coastal functional assessment. The next slide shows the results of that functional assessment. This shows the adjacent wetland system is suited for a number of principal functions and values. The principal and functions and values of that adjacent wetland is flood flow alteration, fish and shellfish habitat, sediment and toxicant retention, nutrient removal, production export, sediment shoreline stabilization, wildlife habitat, endangered species habitat, and ecological integrity. The overall ecological integrity score was 0.65, 1 being the highest you can achieve. So it's ecological integrity, it's above average. The next slide shows some conservation measures to ensure that the project will have no impact to the functions and values of that adjacent resource. These measures include the raising the height of the docking structure to allow more ambient light to reach the surface of the resource. We're providing float stops on the bottom of the float to allow the float to rest on the mud without impact. We're removing the seasonal structures during the non-boating season. Construction will take place between November 15th to March 15th. Adequate levels of erosion and sediment controls are shown on the plans. And we're enhancing the waterfront buffer and the prime wetland buffer with native vegetation and invasive species management removal. And we're incorporating stormwater measurement measures. You may recall we're proposing a rain garden on the north site, and the rest of the downspouts are diverted below the impervious patio where it will infiltrate into the ground. There are 2 4-inch PVC pipes currently that capture roof runoff that drain directly to the wetland. As part of this proposal, we're proposing to cap those, not remove them due to impact, but cap them. So roof runoff will no longer be allowed to get through those pipes, and it will be contained on site via the rain garden and the drain line under the pervious patio where it's allowed to infiltrate. Next slide, please. Also required by DES is a vulnerability assessment, which measures the site's risk or tolerance for rising sea levels. If we could go to the next slide, utilizing the UNH guidance document, this site has a very high tolerance for flood risk. It's in flood zone X, and the home will sit at elevation 21.5. The projected mean high water elevation for year 2150 is 8.8. So in year 2150, this home will sit 12.7 feet above the projected mean high water elevation. And the next few slides just demonstrate the migration based on sea level rise. And I just want you to note as we go through those slides, the very little change to this site. You can see more significant changes to other, but if you see the creep of the blue, and again, that's because this site sits so high, it's steep banks. That's why it does have a high tolerance to flooding and very little impact to rising sea levels with this site. The next few slides are some dock details. The pier, the fixed pier shown on the right, you can see a set of stairs to that. That's leading from the top of the bank to the fixed pier. The fixed pier will be 6 by 72 feet in length. Then there'll be a 4 by 30 seasonal gangway with a 10 by 40 seasonal float with float stops. The next slide demonstrates it's a kind of a cross-section, if you will, showing the mean high water at year 2100. That's projected to be at elevation 7. We're proposing this dock to be constructed around elevation 10. So in the year 2100, we'll still have 3 feet of dock above the mean high water elevation. And lastly, there's a slide that demonstrates the dock's proximity to the site, which shows the pier, gangway, and float. And then we have some, on the next slide, is the DES tidal dock regulations. So the DES maximum length is 200 feet. Our dock is 100, half of that. We are allowed to go to 25% of waterway width at mean low water. In other words, we can go, DES would allow you to extend this dock 86 feet into beyond mean low water to get that 25% width. We're not even going up to mean low water. We're staying far short of that. And the overall footprint allowed by DES is 1,500 square feet, and our docking structure is 888.6 square feet, a little less than half of what's allowed. The float footprint is maxed out, and that's mainly due to boat slips and allowing a boat to dock on there. You need that 40 feet. It's 40 by 10. You need that 40 feet to dock a boat. As part of this permit, we have coordinated with other state and federal agencies. We've coordinated with the Chief Harbor Master, Tracy Shattuck, who's issued a statement within that application that the proposed docking structure will have no negative effect on navigation in the channel. and we've coordinated with the New Hampshire Heritage Bureau, which determined that marsh elder is on this property. It's away from the impact area. We've shown this. If we could go to the next couple slides, please, Peter. Next slide shows the location of the marsh elder. You can see we've circled it in red, and you can see its relationship to the impact of the site. This marsh elder is to be preserved, as there's no construction activity proposed within close proximity to it. And lastly, we've coordinated with the New Hampshire Heritage Bureau, Jessica Bouchard, who's issued a statement that no concerns about impacting the marsh elder as a result of this project. And lastly, we've consulted and coordinated with marine biologist Mike Dion, the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, who's issued a statement that this project will not adversely affect sturgeon species. You're probably aware there's the Atlantic and short-nosed sturgeon species that are prevalent in this Back Bay channel, and that's really why the restriction on the dock construction in late winter, not to impact those species. So that's a summary of the state dredge and fill permit application, which includes both tidal buffer zone impact for the new home, as well as the plantings and the docking structure. Happy to address any questions.
Thanks, Corey. I will start. I do have one question regarding the kayaks and the kayak rack structure that was at the bottom of the stairs.
Yep.
Will all that move to the dock now?
No, the kayak rack is intended to stay where it is. Reason being, as you come down the stairs, they wanted the kayak next to the stairs, and it's a flat area with a little bit. If we move it over to the dock, that means the kayaks would be in the water. When high water comes in, it doesn't reach the kayak rack now, but if we move it over to the right on the other side of the stairs and next to the dock, there's no place to get it where it's not affected by high water.
Yeah, I guess I would mean storing the kayaks on the float or hanging off the, with racks off the fixed pier, just to protect that salt marsh area, and that area looked like it was high-ranking habitat in the map you showed.
Right. Right.
Because it did already look, pretty worn in that area.
Boy, you come down the stairs, go to the left with the kayak rack and the salt marsh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that area of the salt marsh, is that the concern?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Would defer to Becca for that question. The question, Becca, is, if I may, is there an opportunity to store those kayaks on the float with a kayak rack in lieu of the kayak rack at the bottom of the stairs?
I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about that. I'm open to hearing what they think too.
I can tell you when people raise their hand or have questions.
Yeah, I can't see anything.
Yeah, Allison has.
I just agree with you.
Allison.
Okay.
I think it's a good point.
And Abigail.
In the meantime, does anyone else have any other questions? Peter, you can just call on people because I can't see anything.
Yeah,
So,
I don't see any right now, but
okay.
I'll let you know if they do.
Yeah.
Just to be like 100% clear.
Lynn has a question.
The
Go ahead.
the stairs are staying in the same location where we saw them? Okay,
Correct.
that was the final decision.
Yes. They're permitted in that spot, and yeah, it's our intent to keep them there.
Right.
That's it. Other questions? No other questions, Samantha?
Do you want to?
Okay. Do we have a
Or what?
answer from the homeowner about the kayak rack?
The preference is to keep it where it's at.
Fine.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion so we can talk about it?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to the Wetlands Bureau to approve the application for 70 Pleasant Point Drive with two stipulations. One is that the gangway and float storage be off-site, and the second, that the kayak rack should be moved to the float or the pier.
Second?
I'll second that.
Jessica, seconded.
Okay, discussion?
I agree that the salt marsh area is being affected by the rack that's there now, and more foot traffic is just not going to make the situation better. So that's why I think moving that kayak rack is important.
I agree with you, Allison.
Can you say where you wanted how you wanted that second stipulation? Sorry.
I wanted to move the kayak rack to the float of the pier.
To the float
or the pier.
Okay.
Or just, I mean, it doesn't even need to be the rack anymore. It's just either storing the kayaks on the float, or there's hardware you can get to attach them to the fixed pier as well, I've seen.
Or even up in the upland grassy area.
Yeah, or in the upland. True.
Feels like it helps compensate a little bit for the impact of the dock itself,
Right, I agree.
which is, it's a sizable dock.
Yeah.
Are we ready to, any more discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Looks like it.
Okay. Do you want to do roll call, Peter?
Yep. How about you? What are you voting? Sam?
Yes.
Or the chair? I guess I should do you last, but I did you first. Jessica?
It's okay.
Yes.
Yes. Lynn?
Yes.
Abigail?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Barbara?
Recuse.
Recuse. Barbara's recused. Yep. And then Sam voted yes. Okay. So all unanimous with one recusal.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I just want to express our appreciation too for the site walk. In the town of Rye, every application is done with a site walk. I know you can't see them all, but we really appreciate it when the commission gets out, sees the property, because I think it really helps. It helps the review process, and just want to say how much we appreciate you coming out and looking at the site. So, thank you all.
It does help.
Yeah. And your team really showed up too. It was nice to have so many people to talk to.
Want me to take over, Sam? Want to pass it back?
Barbara's taking the gavel
Yes,
back.
back to you, Barbara.
You don't have to guess on what everybody's doing here.
Yeah.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the Wetlands Conditional Use Permit, new business 1169/1171 Sagamore Avenue. Somebody here to speak to that.
Yeah, it's nice. That's nice.
Thank you, Joe Coronati with Jones and Beach Engineers. With me, I have Mike Garapi, he's the applicant. We have Jim Gove and Mick Kavari, who's the architect. This is the site that we walked last week, and we're here tonight for a conditional use permit impacts to the wetland buffer for basically drainage intake and outfall on Sagamore Ave. And these requirements for stormwater were part of our TAC approval. This is basically a culvert and a treatment system that we're putting under Sagamore Road that allows an overflow from our site to cross Sagamore into property that is city-owned. And so we have two small buffer impacts, one on either side of the road. There's minimal vegetation in those areas. We do have details on this plan here. I can try to highlight the two areas. I don't remember which button is the,
We give you,
it is the top button.
there you go.
So this is basically the cross culvert on Sagamore, and we have a buffer impact on the west side of the road and one on the east side of the road. No direct wetland impacts for this development or for this drainage work. And a lot of this drainage work stemmed from a requirement that we have to put a sidewalk on Sagamore. Currently, the sidewalk currently ends one street down on the north side of this road, which I think is actually called Sagamore as well, but we might have it as Sea Star Cove. It's the entrance to Sea Star Cove condominiums. The sidewalk ends on the north side of their property, and the city requested that we bring a sidewalk all the way to the north side of our driveway entrance. That sidewalk having to be raised with curbing required that we put catch basins in on the road, and then it became a question as to where do we outlet these catch basins, how do we handle the stormwater from the road, and so this system here is mainly for the stormwater in the roadway. It also helps as an overflow from our stormwater. It's not our main outfall from our project. All of our stormwater is treated before it gets to this culvert. And with this culvert, because we're taking street stormwater, we've also added a structure called the jellyfish. So we're actually treating the water from the state road in this system as well. So this is treated water and two small temporary buffer impacts that will put the culvert in and the head walls, and then those areas will revegetate. We're also removing a small area of invasives that were found on the side of Sagamore. And during the site walk, it was noted that there's some Japanese knotweed right towards the outfall, I guess outside of our impact area shown. So we will, on the revised next set of plans, we'll show that area as that Japanese knotweed to also be removed. And we're also noted that the trees, there's a couple existing trees that were noted on the site walk, and those we'll call those out to be saved as well. And that's all I have. There's no conditional use permit needed for the development itself, the 10 units on the property. This is just all for this off-site work.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions from the commissioners? Jess?
From my understanding, Contech has a jellyfish filter, but they also have a storm filter that's specific for storm water management. From my understanding from these plans, you're using the jellyfish one and not the storm filter, is that correct?
We are, and this one is meant for stormwater. It does
Okay.
have the same filtering techniques. So this is for stormwater mainly.
Okay. And who is going to maintain this? I know.
The applicant developer is required to install it. The city is agreeing to maintain all of this system because it's in the state right away, but the state won't maintain it. Same with the sidewalk, and that's part of the DOT's permit will require the city to maintain the stormwater and the sidewalk.
Yes, Allison?
So are you planning to replant the area where the invasive species are coming out with the conservation mix?
Yes, I believe that's yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Abigail?
Maybe it's somewhere in here, but, so you're putting, 10 houses or whatever it is, or 10 buildings, and a driveway. So and right now it's just 2 houses, so there's a lot more impervious stuff going on to that. Now, is that water, where that water is all, what's happening with the runoff from the whole property now with all of that, non-porous stuff? And is it going into that stormwater thing that's the state or the city that then goes under the road? I mean, you said you're basically just doing the sidewalk, but what's happening to all the water that's being,
It's
not going into a ground
Right.
on your lot?
It's a very complex drainage system, so there's a series of rain gardens. There's a rain garden here, another one here. There's underground detention structures here and here. There's another structure off here. So we are treating and holding and releasing all this stormwater from the development on site. And then it all ends up going into that little low area. It's really hard to see right here, but there's that low spot in here is where it all ends up being discharged. That's where all the stormwater goes.
Right.
Basically from the site now. And we have to have a stormwater reduction and treatment before we can send it to that low spot.
What happens with these, storms that are, 500-year-old storms that are happening much more frequently now? And, I mean, can that whole the rain gardens and the underwater, the underground stuff, can that, what's the capacity for that? I mean, is it just going to flood into that and then flood under, I mean, is it just going to end up going over into the wetland when we were on the site, it seemed as if not, but because
Right.
the height is higher and it can't go through, and whatever.
You'd have to really read the entire drainage report.
Yeah, well, and that's why I'm asking. 'Cause
Which
I was like,
I can't, I guess I
Okay,
can't
so
tell you
it's-
number by number, but yes, there's multiple storms. This is designed, it's not designed up to 500 year. There's no requirement in this state to go that
Right.
high, but there's requirements for 50-year storms, 100-year storms. We have overflows.
Okay.
And this system is basically, only gets utilized, the part of the system that's that we're permitting for the CUP only gets utilized for the larger storm events, 25 and the 50. It's not the culvert's not set at the bottom. It won't get
Right.
the smaller storms, but it will end up taking larger storms. But there's a large receiving area on the other side of the road as well.
Okay, thank you. Apologize if everybody else knew the answers to that.
Actually, I was wondering why, with your extreme precipitation estimates, there's a plus 15% and there's stuff done in the margins there.
Oh, on the drainage report?
Yes, yeah.
So, well, the plus 15% is because we're in the seacoast area. So we have to add, basically additional rainfall to the rainfall amounts that were given to sort of address some of the previous concerns about larger storms that seem to be happening.
Yeah,
That's all it
but
is.
the thing is that you only address up to a 50-year, and you don't go into the 100-year. And, my recollection is that we have a 100-year storm every couple of years.
We just go by what the cities require. So not everyone requires a 100-year storm. And to be honest, the 100-year storm hasn't really happened that frequently. If you look at those stormfall amounts, the rainfall amounts, that's within 24 hours.
Yep.
And I think the 50-year storm might be 9 or 10 inches of rainfall, but it's in 24 hours. It's not in 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. It's in just 24 hours. So that's a storm that, the Mother's Day storm, everyone talked about being a 500-year storm. That storm was spread out over 3 days. Even that storm didn't happen as quick as these storms that we're required to design for.
Okay, thank you.
happen.
Other questions? Yes.
I had just a question about just the overall drainage, and like what the natural condition was. So did it naturally flow this direction? And then what happens to the water after it enters this wetland on the other side of the street? Do you know where the path it takes out to the river?
I can answer that.
I don't.
Yeah, okay, really great.
There is, we're in a drought, so
Yeah.
that is the first time that I've ever seen that area dry. That's usually an active vernal pool / pond. And there's actually a creek that runs from that through some city property, through actually some of the marina property, and under 1B through a culvert out into Sagamore Creek.
So there's a good outlet for it. It's not going to just pile up there.
No, yep,
Yeah.
it flows. Technically, it's not my backyard, but it flows through my backyard and then under the road and out into Sagamore.
Nice. Okay.
I was going to ask you that when we got into the discussion.
Yeah.
And then, do you have any sense? Is this the natural direction that it would have flowed from this particular property? Do you?
Well, part of what started this conversation is that it appears, and it seems odd that there was not a culvert
Right.
here. We looked at city records, we looked at, we talked to DOT. But when you look at both sides of the street, there's low points, and there's wetlands on both sides of the street, and somehow they're not connected by a culvert. It seemed like there probably was one there. Nobody could find records of it, but it is basically the natural drainage course is just exactly what was, it kind of would flow from our low point, if that Sagamore wasn't there, right across into the other wetland and continue all the way to Sagamore Creek. And so we're sort of, I think we're sort of putting in what seems like it should be there. Maybe they'll find an old culvert when they get into that work. And a lot of our site does flow, most of our site flows into that low spot that's half on our property and half off. There's a couple areas, one area out back here that flows onto the neighboring piece behind us to the west. In order to reduce the stormwater going in their direction, we have a holding tank area that's actually going to divert it back towards this low spot. And that's mainly for the reason that we can't increase stormwater in any direction. We have to look at all of our outfalls and make sure we have a decrease in every direction. And so those are mainly most of the stormwater heads to this low point here. But there's a small percentage that does head out back towards Sea Cove condos behind us, but we'll be stopping that. And they have a detention pond right on the other side of our property line also that we were trying not to have our water go into.
Okay.
Other questions? Samantha? Okay.
Samantha does have a question.
She does. Oh, good. Samantha?
The staff memo recommended a one-year-long monitoring plan of the invasive species, I guess, that were removed, and then the planting plan. Is that something you're amenable to?
Yes.
And then my other question was if you were also amenable to practicing organic land care management practices on your larger parcel there, as all that is ultimately going to flow into the wetland area, even though it will be treated.
Is this reference to the NOFA standards for?
Yeah. Yep.
You familiar with those at all? Jim is. That sounds fine, right? I'm getting one yes and one I don't know what it is.
Okay.
But I assume it's a fertilizer, like basically no high strength fertilizers, low strength.
Yeah, eliminating synthetic pesticides and fertilizers.
That sounds fine, and that's something we can add in our, both of those would obviously be conditions of anything you vote on and can be added in the condominium documents too.
Great, thank you.
He's given a thumbs up.
Right. You're good now? All right. I already agreed to it, but that's okay.
Thank you, Samantha. Yes, Lynn.
While we're talking about the landscaping on the residential area, you mentioned keeping some trees in particular. Do you mind just pointing out on the map, like where those are and just?
I can maybe. Peter, do you have the luck of getting the color
have the
rendering that
color.
we sent over a
We
couple
have,
days
yeah.
ago
Showed
from
the-
Isaac?
Where the trees are staying.
Yes,
And
but I
then
don't
across the street too.
know if we have it in
Said that we
here.
didn't want those trees cut. There were some.
I couldn't
near
get
there.
it to
So that's the ones he was
download.
referring to. the ones
There
across
when
If
the
not,
street.
we can
Okay.
just look at the landscape plan, but I didn't know if you had the,
Yeah.
I don't think I got it. Well, unless you put it, I don't think we have it on the,
We did get it over email.
we got it, but I
That's
don't think
right,
we
that's
got it
what I
into the
saw. I
packet.
was
It was
like,
separate.
why
It was
am I-
I
separate.
don't think it's in the meeting packet, but I can go back to the landscape plan. If I can get there. Whoops, there it is.
So kind of in the center there, is that?
There's a
so
landscape
the,
plan.
No,
the only trees that, oops, I keep doing the wrong button.
They're the ones-
on the other side of the street.
The only trees that are areas that we can completely save is this corner. There's a ledge knob and a bunch of these little dots. They look really small, but they're actually all existing large trees. And then we have
Thank you.
the ability to keep some of the trees over in this corner as well. But the rest of them pretty much going to have to be, cut and replanted for the construction of the houses, the driveways, and the stormwater system. And then this is the trees to be replanted. We have a thick buffer along these two property lines. We have an agreement, with the abutters. Some of these trees are actually on their land to even help buffer their property more. We have a large green space area in the middle, and then we'll have planting for each of the units and between the units. So we'll have to replant a lot of the existing trees that are out there. But we're able to, I think, do that with lots of green space around this. It looks better in color, but you'll see that there's quite a bit of space for green.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. I think there's no other question. I'm going to go out on a reach a little bit too, on the other property, just to ask a question about the snow storage. Because it kind of connects with a little bit what's going on in the culvert on the outfall there. And my understanding is that where you're storing the snow, in the center there, there's underground storage of stormwater, and then that outlets to the culvert? Is that
It
right?
gets, everything gets treated before it gets outletted. So everything on our site, any of the rain or snow that's on the pavement or in that center area gets treated before it has an outfall. So even the snow will be treated if it's stored there. Any of the snow around the outside of the edge of pavements gets picked up and brought into treatment areas. So there is adequate space for both snow storage and the stormwater treatment.
So just to point out that nothing will treat the chloride, the salt, so you're not able to treat that, so that's still going to discharge, so just to keep that in mind in your planning purposes. I know that's not under what we're reviewing today, but
Right.
just want to make that point that you're storing the snow somewhere where it's going to be concentrated salt going into that wetland, so,
Well, hopefully diluted salt, but
right,
not concentrated, but
more concentrated than natural, so.
right.
But I know that's not under our review, so, go ahead.
I have a question related to, when you said treated, what does that mean?
Well, there's different stormwater treatment devices, that we're allowed to use that treat stormwater for, to meet city's rules, which are very similar to the state's rules.
More filtration than anything else?
Yeah, there's infiltration as part of it. We have infiltration, we have the rain gardens.
Okay.
There's quite a few different devices on this for treatment.
Okay.
It's been through kind of a lengthy review by the city at TAC.
Okay.
Because of the ledge and the stormwater and the tightness of the site. So we've been through quite a bit of review on that aspect, and
Okay.
and I think we're basically all signed off on that aspect on site for sure. And so that was they had similar concerns as well on stormwater, and I think it's been pretty well vetted at this point. Peter's seen us at, I don't know, what, 6 or 7 TAC meetings.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. And no other questions from the commissioners? Before we do a motion, I think, I was gonna just see if it's okay, right, before we do a motion,
Yeah,
maybe?
I think so.
Okay to open it up if there's any questions from the public? No? Okay, nobody online?
Oh, just Samantha.
Samantha?
I said, no, she doesn't have a question. She's just the only one online.
Oh, my gosh, okay, great. So anybody want to make a motion? Yes.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval for the conditional use permit at 1169, 1171 Sagamore Ave with the stipulations that the invasive species be monitored and managed, and that NOFA standards are used for organic land care management at the site and included in the condominium docs.
Okay. Anybody want a second? that?
Second.
Second by Lynn. Discussion? No? Okay. And we want to go for a vote, then roll call vote.
Yep. Samantha,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Abigail,
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Or-
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank
Guys.
you.
Passes. Great. So next on the agenda is 0 Patricia Drive. Anybody here to speak to that?
Same people.
I have a speaking role in this particular application. Mike Garrity with Garrity Planning Consultants. And I guess it's been a while since I've been before the commission with respect to this project. And I'm not sure how many members were on the board when we were in front of you before, but we've been working with the city planning staff and the legal department to satisfy some conditions of approval. This is a previously approved subdivision. It was approved back in February of 2021. And I guess through lack of following the clock, our conditional use permit expired in February of 2022. So we're at this point we're wrapping up sort of final revisions to the planning board conditions of approval and changes to revisions to the Mylars, but obviously we need to take the next step, which is back in front of you folks today to have hopefully your favorable recommendation to the planning board to re-grant the conditional use permit for this project. I can take you through the plans and the criteria, and Jim is here as well. Jim Gove is still with me, thankfully. Jim did all the wetland delineation. This project, there's an existing roadway infrastructure already in place along this right-of-way, right off of Martha Terrace, and it's was intended at one point to, the road was this road here shown on the plan here. I think it's the top button. Top button. So this right-of-way here is existing, both on paper and in the field. There's existing pavement, existing drainage infrastructure in place, and it's currently, as you can see, as depicted in the darker shade. I'm pressing the wrong button again. The darker shaded area is area that is current area of impact that's in the prime wetland buffer. So we're looking to actually have a reduction in the total wetland buffer, prime wetland buffer, by removing all the existing asphalt and repaving the road narrower. I believe we're doing 18 feet versus the 20 to 24 foot wide pavement width that's out there now. We weren't really able to determine the exact existing width of pavement, but we're able to sort of probe and kind of figure it's about 20 to 24 feet wide currently. So we'll actually end up with a reduction in impervious within the buffer. But because we are impacting the buffer, we needed to go before the board, this commission and the planning board for a conditional use permit. We've also gone before the state NHDES for a prime wetland buffer impact. We have received those permits, and we are also having to pay into the compensatory mitigation program, into the ARM fund for the impacts as well. So,
Can you repeat that last part you just said?
with the NHDES wetland permit for the prime wetland impact, we have a compensatory mitigation for the impacts, and we're paying into the ARM fund for that.
Okay.
So we have a payment in lieu of mitigation on site. So I know the last time we were before you, you folks recommended, I believe it was unanimously, to carry this forward to the planning board. I know that there were some conditions of that approval, some recommendations from this commission. I believe we implemented those in our plan notations, and we'd certainly carry those over into this new approval.
Barbara?
Thank you. Yes.
I have a couple of questions. One thing is that you say on our packet page number 343, the right-of-way is to be transferred up at the corner where it meets Martha's Terrace. And
Sure.
I don't understand that. What's going on there?
So, Peter, if you want to, I guess it's I think it's I'm not sure what sheet number it is, it may be the next one.
That one?
Not,
No, actually.
I think it's the one previous. My eyes are not seeing it.
Right-of-way to be transferred is on page of the,
I don't know if that may not be part of the, I mean, I think I gave the,
it's sheet 9 of 10, PSP sheet 9 of 10, down the lower right-hand corner.
there it is. So, yes, so this, you're talking about, I keep pressing the middle button, and that's not the right one, by the way. So this area here you're talking about?
Yes, yeah.
So that area here, so herein lies a lot of the confusion with this application. So I'm actually going upstairs after this to meet with Beverly again and with the legal department to talk about this a little bit further. Peter's been involved in some of these discussions as well. It's riveting, and you should join us afterwards. That section of the right-of-way was actually dedicated as part of the plat recordation back in 1960-something. It was also along with all of Martha Terrace as well. So the Martha Terrace roadway and then this little sort of section of roadway was dedicated and accepted by the city. So it's owned by the city. The rest of the right-of-way is owned by the abutting parcel, so the rest of the unshaded area here is all owned by the abutters to the north and the south of the right-of-way.
So, having not been on the site, I'm just wondering why the road couldn't swing further away from, or toward that 100 buffer line, if we swing it a little bit further that way. Is it because there are a bunch of trees there? If there are a bunch of trees there, I don't want to obviously bother them.
Well, when you say, so I'm assuming
Yeah,
you're saying further
I'm saying the roadway, like through that right of way, why can't we move it closer to the, like you have a 100-foot prime wetland buffer delineated?
Sure.
And I'm wondering why we can't just curve the road a little bit further away from the wetland itself.
Well, two things. One is that we're mimicking the existing roadway, so all we're really doing is removing the asphalt, and then we're going to repave in the exact same spot, which is already disturbed area. Secondly, right along, and I guess it's the westerly, or the easterly side of the property, excuse me. So all along here, so if you can see where my cursor is in the middle of this circle, there's a retaining wall that runs all the way along this edge of the roadway. So, and it's a significant grade change. There may be, it may be shown in the photos, Peter.
Actually, on this plan, it's hard to see, but on this sheet, there's topo.
Yeah.
It
If you,
shows it's a little steeper up on that. It's like a hill.
Okay.
and Peter, if
okay.
you look at the photos that I submitted
Oh, yeah.
along with the CUP application, you'll see.
Where are they? Are they before this?
It's,
Yeah.
there we go. So there should be a photo. See that retaining wall there?
That one there.
So we're getting as close to that wall as we can, and you can see all the pavement, obviously. It's in good shape, but it's, it was paved back in the early 70s. It was all constructed. And then we're maintaining all of those trees on the westerly side of the right-of-way. And those are all been marked with conservation flag tags, so,
Yeah.
no cutting, what have you.
Another question is, why can't the snow storage be next to the houses?
The snow storage next to the houses. Well, as it's designed, the snow would be pushed, and it would, Peter, I don't know if you can go to, I think there's 2 sheets in where it shows the driveway plan. So the snow storage would naturally be, as they're plowing, they're going to wing it to either side. I guess they could look to winging it towards the easterly side of the road, and that would allow the snow to melt, and then get into the collection, to get into the drainage structure, which is a proposed rain garden. And then ultimately, it's going to be pushed as they're plowing, because it'll be one plow operator doing the roadway and the driveways. It'll be privately maintained.
It's going to be privately maintained?
It is, yep. The roadway will be all privately maintained. So that one area that we were talking about before, it's part of the city's right-of-way. The city council is deeding that back to the landowners, so it'll all be privately maintained.
So we really appreciate having anybody that's plowing snow be Green Snowplow Pro trained. So I'd like that to be stipulated as part of this project.
That is commonplace these days, so I don't see that as being an issue. If that's something you want to add as an additional recommended condition of approval for the CUP.
And your design is based on a 10-year, 24-hour storm event, when we've had a lot more sort of 100-year storms recently. And so I'm just wondering, did you look at the future and?
Well, I can tell you that I am not an engineer, and I don't have my engineer with me. However, we designed it in accordance with DPW's requirements, so it's always vetted through TAC as well. And so we designed the rain garden to accommodate their requirements. Right now, there is no treatment. I mean, it is all impervious, even though there's some breakup in the asphalt. It's still, compacted gravel underneath, and there's no treatment to the runoff today. And we'll be providing a narrower roadway at the end of the day.
Great.
I believe in our last approval, we stipulated that there be signage talking about the fact that there's a prime wetland,
Yes,
and that's still included.
those placards are actually installed already.
Okay, thank you.
On the tree.
Yep. I don't know as if there are
You didn't
pictures
include it, but you did
included.
send me pictures of that. Yeah.
No, they are up though. They are uploaded onto the city's site. Vincent Hayes required those, and we do have photos of them.
Abigail first.
But they're also along
Let's see them.
they're also along the entire prime wetland line onto the lots as well.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Samantha?
Do you know, Peter, if there was a stipulation of the previous approval that we had use of NOFA standards on there?
I think so.
And if not, would they be amenable to those standards?
I believe there was, and we would.
I can't recall, but they are.
Perfect.
Good? Great. Question? Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Can you tell me a little bit about the history of this, this piece of property? Who owns it? Is it somebody adjacent in one of the things? Has it been handed down? Is it, I'm just kind of curious why, what the history is of it. Is it a new purchase? I mean, I know a year ago you guys submitted whatever, but, or a year plus. Can you tell me what the history is?
I can't tell you all the history. I can tell you that the subdivision was approved back in I believe it was in the mid-'60s, and the build-out of Martha Terrace and part of this Patricia Drive, which is, we're renaming it Hemlock Way or Hemlock Drive. There was one lot owned by the Fox family, and
Have they owned it ever since?
yes,
the 70s?
they had owned it for many years. I'm not exactly sure how many years they owned it, but we recently acquired it in, I believe, July of 2021.
Who recently acquired?
We did.
You did,
So
okay.
Hemlock Realty Investments LLC is current owner of the
Okay.
property.
So it's spot on spec. You're going to build two houses, and they're both going to be sold to
Correct.
somebody not
Yep.
in your family. Probably.
More than likely correct, yes.
Okay. I guess that's all I've got.
Okay. Thanks. Lynn?
I had sort of a similar question, just thinking about, I mean, I know our role is really just to look at the road, which is in the 100-foot buffer, but, so just to clarify, so you're building two homes, and then does this road open up any additional space for
It
development
doesn't.
down the road, or?
So the property line is, it's in right here. So this property line is the end of our property, and it's undeveloped land back in here. The road was intended, if you look at the old subdivision plans, the road was intended to go all the way through and then back up to, there's another Patricia Drive on the other side, which is actually Patricia Drive, but it ends in another cul-de-sac. It was intended to connect there, and there was, plan was to do, can't recall how many lots there were in a future phase. It might have been another 15 lots or something like that. But that can't happen going forward.
Because,
Well, we have no ownership of that parcel. And per this plan, there will be two homes in the way. So I
Right,
don't
yeah,
think
that's
there will
kinda-
be any ability to connect through.
right,
So,
and I'm assuming that's part of your role, Peter, is kind of looking at sort of long-term planning. Is this an area where you're hoping to have some additional residential development? Just,
No,
no, yeah,
no, but, I mean, there's, if the property meets the zoning and they can figure out access, and there would be, I think it would be really challenging in this location because it's so steep back there and there's no connection without going through private property. So there's no other right-of-way that would connect to this that I'm aware of. So they would basically have to, create a road through someone's yard.
right, yeah.
So I think this is going to be the end of that development. These are just the last two out pieces that they were able to, like you said, there was a lot more platted, but they never went to fruition. And so this is what they were able to come up with in terms of a design that would work with the new wetland regulations and things.
Right, okay.
So if they had built it back in 69, they probably wouldn't have had to deal with the wetland regulations. There wouldn't have been prime wetlands. But
Okay.
since they didn't, they're more limited on their site here.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for that background. Because I missed I wasn't here for the first time you came before the commission.
I do have a follow-up. You talked about how the road's going to be narrower, and so you're actually getting rid of some of the pervious or impervious thing. But I went out there, and that is about the most pervious asphalt I've ever seen in my life. It's basically decomposing, and nature is just taking it back. I know there's a bed underneath, but things are sprouting up, but it seems as if you're going to be running power lines and water lines and things like that, and so it seems a little, I don't know, I feel like it's more disruptive than maybe, it's like, oh, it's going to be better, and I'm like, I don't know if that's the case, but it's,
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak,
but-
I can't speak from what's happening environmentally with all the asphalt breaking up and every storm event. That's going somewhere.
Yeah,
So-
oh no, it should get out, but any
So
asphalt
the removal of
goes
that
in,
and then the introduction of a new asphalt base and top coat and then treatment, I think would be ultimately of benefit beyond where it is today. So but I can't speak to, I believe it would be we believe it will be environmentally better with the treatment as well. But yeah, you're right. It is breaking up. The photos, show that as clear as day. But as I think you folks probably know, we have to treat all of that still as impervious because of the compact gravel that's underneath what's breaking up.
Any other questions, concerns? Do we want to make a motion? Allison?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of the Hemlock Way application with two stipulations. One is that they use a Snow Pro trained plow driver, and the second is that NOFA standards should be added to their deed or plan.
I'll second.
Okay, great, thank you. Discussion?
Yeah.
Yes.
We sat at that table talking about, 25 feet is for water filtration, 100 feet is for something else, 250 is for wildlife. This is a prime wetlands area. It's a bog, it has trees. These houses are going to take out some of the only tree line along that whole area. And I know it's the 100-foot buffer, but it's all part of the buffer, and it's all part of the wetlands. And where do we draw the line between taking out a dense forested area to put in two homes with a lot of space, and probably people are they're gonna have lawns and this and that, and not respect the ecosystem that needs to be there for that prime wetlands. That's my dilemma.
Okay, Abigail,
Or whatever.
I would just like to comment that we have jurisdiction over 100 feet.
Right.
And here's the 100-foot buffer.
Right.
And those two houses are outside the 100-foot buffer.
I understand that, but
And
the
there's
access to it is
there's-
in our control.
There's already pavement in that area.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to tear it up, and they're going to,
Yeah, I know that. You don't have to tell me that.
Okay.
I mean, I get
Fine.
that, but as a result of tearing that up and putting in a potentially better system, who knows? You are inviting more traffic to that whole area, and you're destroying forested area around. So anyway, so that's just it's. Anyway, if our directive is to protect wetlands, we have to protect more. I mean, it needs to be looked at more than just 100 feet, because 100 feet doesn't protect them. But anyway, that's why I didn't ask him about it. I'm just sharing it with you. Also, on a side note, around where Allison was talking about that right-of-way area, somebody's dumping something into where the little emblems are on the trees. Somebody is dumping yard waste stuff, a lot of lawn clippings up against big trees, right next to the driveway of that house that's there at the corner. And there are lots of branches and stuff, but there's a lot of cut grass there, just kind of molding. Anyway, so as a side note, right by the sign that's, protect, not
the
allowed to disturb it.
Yes.
And there's some cool hiking trails in there too, so
Yeah.
I discovered that. Anyway, that's,
It's hard, yeah. I think we also have Samantha.
Samantha has a comment, a question.
Yeah, was there lighting discussed for the last approval, just of the roadway area?
No lighting proposed.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Other discussion? It is always hard, especially when you're cutting down trees, and to kind of stay within our jurisdiction on this one. And it's a prime wetland, so. There's no, anybody from the public wanted to speak? No? Okay, we want to do a vote on this. All those in favor, roll call?
Could I just ask one question? Is this a project that's gone through TAC, Peter? Is that-
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there anything there
Well-
that surfaced in terms of other people's priorities around the city that we should be aware of?
There was some back and forth on the stormwater, for sure. And then there's still some back and forth on the subdivision piece. But, yeah, they designed it to at least add new treatment in there where they hadn't any treatment. Right before, there was stormwater, but it was just catch basins that went right in, there was no treatment, other than maybe a deep sump. Wasn't even deep, but there was a sump. So now there's stormwater treatment. But other than that, there's not a lot. TAC had some, looking at the utilities and access and all that. But it's going to be a private road,
Right.
so.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. I think there's also whatever we might recommend, it could easily get overrode at the planning board phase, right? I guess I was just sort of weighing that. Yeah. Cool.
Okay,
Roll call?
thanks. Yep, roll call.
So Samantha,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Abigail,
no.
Allison,
Yes.
Barbara.
Yes,
So it's 5-1?
5-1.
Is that the right number?
Motion passes.
Yep, 5-1.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Next on the agenda, we have a work session at 124 Kensington Road. Anybody here for that? Do we have a time we have to get out of here?
I don't think there's yes, Kevin says.
Yes, what?
Is there HDC tonight? Or a meeting after us?
And is there anybody, while we're just got a minute, want a motion to go past 5:30? Allison?
I'll make a motion that we go past the 5:30, but stop at 6.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor, roll call. Jess?
Yes.
I'm just looking at the,
Abby?
Yes. Yes.
Lynn, yes.
The historic district it's at 6:30 tonight.
yeah, historic district, yeah.
Sam?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
So yeah,
Okay.
we should try to be done by 6:15 at the latest.
Okay,
I
6:15.
have to leave at 6.
You can- Okay, go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
Thank you. For the record, Eric Weinrib with Altus Engineering. I also have with me Darlene Olette, who's one of the owners, her and her husband, Neil. It's 124 Kensington Road, tax map 152, lot 20. And it's a 19,000 square foot lot, probably developed somewhere 75 to 100 years ago. In 2012, when we were working on the Sanderson original parcel, they acquired additional land because they are right up against, well, they were right up against their back property line, and they really valued that wetland system that now adjacent to them, Peter Laughlin had purchased, and they wanted to make sure at that time that that area was preserved, and And so that they bought that additional land. So, I'm a lefty. So the back of their property line like used to be that, so they bought all this land here, which is primarily the wetlands. There was no wetlands actually on their original parcel. So it's the parcel itself is much larger than most of the other parcels in the neighborhood. It's about 19,000 square feet, and most of the parcel is actually made up. How do I switch this sheet here?
Oh, I do it.
You do.
Sorry.
I have no control.
Nope.
You're killing me.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So as you can see, the wetlands is in the back portion of the site, and that the 100-foot buffer encumbers almost the entire parcel. That really a building envelope that's outside the 100-foot buffer and meets the front and side yard setbacks is a tiny sliver, which includes the front part of their home and then just a little bit part of their driveway. So what they want to do is they have a detached garage. It's basically at ground elevation, and it's only a couple feet away from the existing home. And what they want to do is be able to have an attached garage. And so in order to build that attached garage, you actually have to push it a little bit further away because the finished floor of the house is about 4 feet above grade. So you got to be able to figure out how to go from at grade and then get up 4 feet. So that's why the building is pushed over further. We've moved it away from the wetland system so that we can actually, increase the buffer in the backyard area. And we're also proposing some vegetation improvements in the area. So I think we have a pretty complete application. I think it's a very reasonable application. We're only adding about 800 square feet of impervious on the lot. The patio in front's going to be permeable materials, and then everything drains away from the wetland for the driveway area. The roof pitch is down the middle, so there'll be stone drip edge in the back. And we're looking for some input before we file the formal application. I think it's an excellent application. Darlene's here to speak to it from the owner's perspective if you have any questions for her.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Questions? Allison?
Yeah. Why can't the entire new development move forward
So further forward,
that way on the lot?
towards Kensington.
Yes.
So it has a lot to do with a couple different things, but primarily the existing house and the connection point. To move it forward would actually change significantly the connection from the existing house to the back and change the interior layout of the house.
It's further away from the buffer. It's a complete redo. You're ripping up the garage that's there and you're building a new one rather than putting it where it is. I would really like to see it further away from the buffer, and I would like to see that entire driveway be porous as well.
But I don't have an objection to the driveway being porous. I think that we can work with that. Moving it further forward changes a lot of the flow in the house. It changes structural issues, and keeping it in its location allows you to minimize impacts of rebuilding a significant portion of the house. We are moving it further away. We're not having any hardscape, traffic areas in back. We're treating all that water that's coming off, and we are increasing the buffer and providing more native plantings back there.
Yeah, but you're increasing the impervious surface by 764 square feet.
Correct.
Is there
So
anything that you're doing to improve that?
We'll offset that easily by making the rest of the driveway permeable.
Do you have some sort of information to show the layout of the house? That would be helpful.
I think the architectural may be in the packet. I don't know if we included those or not.
This,
I don't see the existing house. I
there's a
see the
garage floor
new.
plan. There's the, yeah, the new.
Back one.
That's, I think, the only floor plans.
Yeah. So that's the floor plan, and that connection point is where the existing doorway is today. So moving it forward would interfere with the stairs going to the second floor.
Go, Samantha?
When you do come back before us with the actual application, it would be really helpful to see photos of the existing lot and the wetland, and just I'm having a hard time visualizing what's there now, so that would be very helpful.
Meaning the vegetation or what? I mean, we can provide photos, but
Yeah, vegetation, but also, just to get a better sense of how close, the existing garages to that 25-foot no-cut buffer, what's kind of in that no-cut buffer now, where this new proposed garage is going to go, just generally what the vegetation is like there, and grade and things like that.
okay, so the plan we have a grading plan. We also have on the site plan showing the built infrastructure. There's some retaining wall in that area and bark mulch. There's very little built infrastructure today in the 25-foot no-cut buffer. The primary activity other than enhancing the buffer is all between the 25 and 50 foot. So we're not really doing anything in that area. If you go to C2, you can see that 25-foot buffer line.
Yeah, plans only go so far. It's very helpful to see an actual visual in photographs. That's all I'm asking.
We can provide photos, absolutely.
So I'm thinking, I know it's just a residential project, that doing a site visit, just a quick one, so people can see it.
Be happy to.
Because I found
I
it
agree
really
with that,
helpful to go
Barbara.
to the property and see, because there's a big lawn expanse, and then the trees are right up against the back there, and they're really big and mature. So it's kind of just helpful to see.
I do want to point out that on the property to the north, that the existing garage is closer to the wetlands than what we're proposing, so we're moving further away than the abutter, and that we're trying to improve the buffer.
Yeah. Other questions, comments?
Yeah, I think a site walk would be very helpful because I just don't understand, there's a deck and there's a door shown, and I don't know why the garage can't move forward.
Okay. Jess?
I just need some clarification on sheet 1, where you show like the shrubs for the buffer planting. There's a hashed orange area. What is that?
C1 or,
It just says sheet 1 of 1.
so the conditional use permit.
Yeah,
Let me just go to that
it
myself.
goes into the shrubs and buffer planting. I'm not clear what that space is that is.
Which section?
It's at the end.
It's the orange hashed part.
Oh, so the orange hatch part, light, this whole area?
Yes.
So that is area that will be temporarily or permanently disturbed through the activity. So that includes some regrading, work for the foundation, and the building itself, and so forth. So anything that's in the buffer that will require some regrading.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's our full impact area, temporary and proposed.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah, I think a site visit would be helpful. I'm kind of like feeling like this is sort of, it'd be good to see, like, when you say you're coming in, if you move it forward, you've got to come in by the stairs, it's, and I know that you are moving it a little bit back, but this is all in the buffer, so,
The whole lot is
yeah,
almost. in-
totally, the whole lot's in the buffer.
Yeah.
But that, moving it back a little bit but increasing the size that dramatically, it's kind of, it's just hard to.
And so the garage itself today is basically non-functional because it's so small, you can't get two vehicles in it. And
Doesn't mean it's
it's
non-functional.
really important as, I don't want to say this, but I will, as they age in place, to be able to have on their garage and be able to come and go from their garage without going in and out. I just reconstructed my garage down the road, and it's fantastic. We're excited, but it's not attached. And so they're only 3 feet away, and they don't want to go anywhere. They want to stay there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's a way to think outside the box and make both happen, but just that's the feedback at this point. So,
And as you kind of alluded to, a decision on this house sets a precedent for other houses, and you've already kind of alluded to that, so I think we're also just conscious of that.
So, and behind there, at this point, anything else that you want to say about the buffer plantings? There's not a.
We haven't specifically gone through the full buffer plantings. I believe we called out on the conditional use plan, that we'd be planting 3 feet on center or 11 per 100 square feet, and we have a list of plantings that we will be providing, but we haven't specifically placed each one yet. And, we want your input on that as well. Are you comfortable with that?
To get the information later on the plantings when you.
The plantings are right there right in the center of. Yeah, right there's the information on the plantings.
Plethora, yeah. Is there any feedback on the plantings at this point?
What's there now? Is it just grass?
I can't hear you.
What is there now in that?
Actually, right behind the garage and on the side is a dense raspberry, little, not that small, pretty large little raspberries, and then there's just a variety of mature plantings in there. There's some oaks. There's a variety of plants, of trees.
So this does represent a significant kind of re-landscaping of that area? That's what I'm trying to get at. No, it's not. Okay.
Yeah, there's no intent for a lawn in back at all.
So it's just like a little enhancement is what you're proposing?
Absolutely.
Little extra plantings?
I mean,
Yeah, that'd be fun.
it's a great little spot. I've been enjoying it for 20 some odd years.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So pretty much what's going to get disturbed is the lawn, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and we have, no issue on making the driveway all permeable.
Okay. No other questions or comments? We'll schedule a site visit for.
Yeah, so how do we do that? Do we do it now, or do we do it through?
We'll send out a email and get with some dates to everybody and then pick it try to get it so you have some time before the next meeting.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda is our 99 Pierce Island Road, the pool house.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Joe Almeida. I'm the facilities manager for the city of Portsmouth. We are here to present the project at the Pierce Island Pool. With me tonight is Wayne Lippert from Oak Point and Associates, and he's been on the design team for quite some time now, so he's very well versed to present and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So just a brief overview on the Portsmouth Pool project. This is the overall existing site plan. The project primarily is a complete renovation of the entire pool and the pool systems.
Oh, I have which sheet do you want?
Yeah, this is perfect. This is
good.
the
Okay.
sheet right here. So
That top button, if you point it right at the screen, yeah, there you go.
So the overall pool, this is the overall pool. So again, the entire pool will be renovated. The liner will be replaced. There'll be the gutter around the pool will be replaced. All the associated piping and pool systems are going to be replaced. And as part of that, the pool pump house is going to need to be replaced. Currently, that's located right here on the northwest corner of that pool house, of the existing pool. It's located within the 100-foot tidal buffer zone. Just off the edge of the sheet is the Piscataqua River. This line right here represents the 100-foot tidal buffer zone. So because we're going to be reconstructing this, we'll be removing this pump house. So we're going to be doing this disturbance within the 100-foot tidal buffer zone is going to trigger the wetlands permit. So we're going to be submitting a standard New Hampshire standard dredge and fill permit as part of this project. If you move to the next sheet, this shows, actually one more sheet beyond this. This is the proposed layout. So this would be the area right here where that existing pump house is located. We're actually pulling that back and constructing that new pump house outside that 100-foot tidal buffer zone. The area that's currently in this area here will be just restored to turf. There will be temporary disturbances that are required as part of this project as well within that 100-foot tidal buffer zone. The pool deck around in these areas, it's going to be essentially, removed and replaced in kind. The layout of the pool deck isn't changing, so that'll be a temporary disturbance of that pool deck. The disturbance, so the overall disturbance for the project within that 100-foot tidal buffer zone is about 9,000 or 9,200 square feet of temporary disturbance. That would be primarily, again, the removal and replacement of that concrete deck, and then the turf areas adjacent to that will be disturbed. There will be some 1,443 square feet of permanent disturbance. That's the area where the existing pump house will be removed, and that's being restored with turf. And then as part of this, there's currently a drainage system that exists around the west side of that pool. It's a very shallow, under-drained drainage type system with small landscape drains. Right now that system is apparently clogged and not functioning well. We believe that it actually discharges out to the river on that west side. I believe that pipe is actually further out, and it may be filled with sediment because of where that's located. So we're essentially going to replicate this drainage system, but we are going to create a new drainage outfall on that north side of the pool to outlet the drainage system for the new project. But again, we will be replicating a very similar drainage system. It will be small landscape drains that are essentially just collecting water that comes off the pool deck and a small adjacent turf area. We propose, as part of this project, in lieu of providing on-site mitigation. We're actually proposing to pay into the RM fee for the permanent impacts within the tidal buffer zone. So I don't know if there were further questions on the application at this point.
Yes, Allison?
I'm sure you've been working on this for a really long time, but only recently, the city council approved the purchase of the community campus. And my thought was, why can't you not fix the pool, but just turn it back into a natural area? And since you're doing everything completely from start to finish, put it out at the community campus where everything else is located. It seems like that would be a much better spot for it than this small island.
Yeah, I'm the engineer on the project, so I can't speak to the city policies and the decisions to that. I understand, that this project it's entirely within the tidal buffer zone. It's within the shoreland. So, but this site has been disturbed. The pool dates back to, the pre-1940s that this was constructed, and we're pretty much, as part of this renovation, making, improvements in kind. There's,
So that clearly would be a, policy decision from the council, absolutely. But I can tell you, in working on the project, and from being here for a long time, the pool is, in the island, of course, is truly the crown jewel of Portsmouth. I mean, it's an amazing amenity to have this pool. It's one of the largest pool. It's almost 900,000 gallon pool. It's very unique. Its shape is unique. It's considered, it has historic value, the pool itself as well. It used to have, I believe it used to be a saltwater pool from actually water clean from the river.
correct.
Yeah, and there used to be a high diving board. So the pool has an amazing history that we realized very quickly when we presented this to the community, just how important the history of the pool was and the continued use of it. A lot of adults in Portsmouth now remember learning to swim in this pool. So, but as far as the global decision of whether it stay or not, that's clearly a council decision. But as of right now, our charge is to fix it and keep it moving.
Okay, yeah, yes, Jess?
I have two questions. You keep referring to turf. What do you mean?
Yes, so the area where we're removing that pump house, it's within the fenced pool area. So around the pool, there's the concrete deck, and between the concrete deck and the fence line, it's actually lawn.
Right.
So users that are out there using, the pool, if they don't want to sit on the concrete, there's the lawn area. So essentially, this small corner will be replaced with lawn. It will be
Okay. It will be lawn, not like a synthetic turf.
No, it'll be
actually.
sod. So we propose to install sod. So it will be sod installed in that area.
And this is just more of a curiosity question. Have they ever considered going back to a saltwater pool instead of?
It's not something we considered as part of the design process.
Okay.
I wouldn't know. We worked with a pool consultant on this, and I wouldn't know the logistics of that and how we get to that, but it's not something we considered.
Okay.
Oh, Sam?
Yeah, have any alternative energy sources been looked at for electrifying the pump house, the existing pool house? I think it would be a great opportunity to potentially put solar out there, and I was just curious if that had come up in any discussions.
It's not. The pump house is actually a relatively small footprint, so there could be some solar panels installed on that roof potentially, but I don't think it would provide enough energy source to run all these pool systems.
Yeah, not necessarily installing them on the roofs of those two structures, but just generally in that area, and then using that power to power all of these things.
Yeah, that's not anything we considered during the design process.
If you had, sorry.
No, go ahead.
On that topic, if you, is shaded area around the pool something that somebody likes? I haven't been to a pool in a long time. I assume some people like to sit in the sun, some people would like to shade, some people like to go sit over on the grass, some on the concrete, or whatever's around. What if you have the solar panels, like those ones that actually provide shade for cars that are power stations? And what if you had some of those, and it could be an educational moment for Portsmouth people at the pool, where they, you maybe have a small bank of the panels on a diagonal, so they're providing shade. They're doing exactly what Sam had suggested. Maybe they're solar thermal too, or PV, a combination of both. So you could heat the water of the pool.
Yeah, it would be,
without using electricity.
it'd be
Anyway,
wonderful to heat that pool. The pool is very cold, but I can tell you, one thing you should know is that Oak Point designed for us 2 years ago a completely new pool house. This pool house that you see to the far right was built in it was built in early 50s, was it not?
Or 50s or
Or maybe late 40s. I mean, it was, yeah, and it's in, structurally, it's in a very, very rough condition. We've been on the roof before, and we literally go through the roof. It needs a complete, it needs a lot of work. We're maintaining it as it is, but there was a design that we reached almost 75% completion in the design of a new pool house that had all the modern amenities of a pool house for visitors and, residents, and there were locker rooms and shower rooms and so forth. That would have been a great opportunity to heat water for showers and so forth, but the amount of power that we would need to generate to run these pumps is very significant, and we would just never be able to produce that much solar power to run these pumps. So when the pool house eventually gets done, I don't have a schedule for that for sure, because it's a multi-million-dollar project. We had to kind of put it on hold. That would be a great opportunity to add solar hot water to all the showers. That would be a perfect application for that.
So a lot of these ideas haven't been talked about. I know, Peter, have you been on the planning?
I haven't in this one. I was involved a little bit back when they were designing the pool house, but I haven't been in on the planning of this.
So there's no sustainable kind of aspect of this when you're discussing this?
Well, there are some things that are in a peripheral way worthy of having a sustainable conversation. One is the chemicals that we use now to treat the water, to handle them and so forth, are, they're more harsh than the way we're going to treat the water in the new systems. The pumps are a lot more efficient. The entire system will be a lot more efficient than the one what we have now.
We're changing from the sand filters to the regenerative media.
That's right. You might want to speak to that briefly.
Sorry?
Yes. So actually, as part of the renovations and modernization of the facilities, right now that existing pump house, there's very large sand filters in there. So essentially, that water goes through these sand filters, and that's how the water is treated. Unfortunately, they tend to be very energy intensive and very water intensive. We actually will be replacing with a regenerative media filter. So we'll use significantly less energy, and it will use a tiny fraction of the water that the sand filters did. But again, this media is used continuously. The water, every 4 to 6 weeks, this media is dumped and replaced, but at that point, the only thing that's wasted is essentially the 700 gallons of water that goes out of this tank. So that does go to some extent to address some of the energy and water concerns versus what's the existing system has.
It'd be great if you could at least take these comments back, and maybe we should figure out another way to have input or whatever. I mean, it seems like some of that's already being discussed with sustainability, but.
Yeah, and there's other ways to offset the use in other parts of the city and in other areas, so it's not just here where the opportunities exist.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't sound like there's a lot. Maybe with the pool house, though, I think that's a good comment to consider the renewable energy potential on the pool house. It's a much bigger roof surface.
Yeah, it is.
Well, the saltwater pool idea is like totally talking about the harsh chemicals and everything here.
Oh, absolutely.
So much better, but I had questions about the trees coming down and no replanting of those trees.
Yeah, we're not proposing to replace any trees there.
So can we ask for that?
I think we would be open to some additional plantings.
Yeah. Unfortunately, to get the pump, sorry, should come to the mic.
Yeah.
To remove the pump house behind the buffer line, we did have to sacrifice a few trees, and we went through Trees and Greenery to get that approved. But there is, there might be some selective, believe it or not, there are duct banks and electrical, duct banks traveling beneath the grass area towards the pump house. So there is a limited area on that side of the fence to do any trees. But maybe on the other side, I mean, we could explore something.
It's cutting down, it looks like maybe 6 or 8
Yeah,
trees.
6.
6
I believe
trees.
it's 6. I think it's 6, yeah. Yeah. And we worked with the city arborist to go out and tag them, and he identified them, and yeah, they were presented to the Greenery Committee.
The whole area is kind of devoid of trees, isn't it?
Samantha?
Yeah, just with the trees, to Abigail's point, that it is nice to maintain shade, at least on part of the lawn area where people sit.
Yep, understood.
Yeah.
Of course, we try to keep the leaves out of the pool as well, but that's minor
Yeah.
compared to, the shade is valuable, and the fewer trees around that are close to the pool, the better. Obviously, they get into the system, but.
It's the roots.
I had a question about this being a draft, and lots of sections missing, and maybe a little bit of inaccuracies in there. So-
Yes, this was, again, a draft. We're still actively working on this. We've required some feedback from the DES to complete some of these sections. So we're still actively working on this, that we have not submitted this to the DES yet. So I don't know if there's any specific sections that you saw that are absent that you had questions on?
No, just sort of like I might have questions on once they're in there kind of things, because it's sort of hard to know when you've got, I think that there was resource information was gone, the BMPs, erosion BMPs, the trench details, elevation.
Yeah, so some of this was actually, I worked with Elizabeth Oliver with Normando Associates, and she had pulled this application together, and when we submitted this, it was sort of, unfortunately, last minute, so there's some additional coordination that needed to happen between Normando and Oak Point. So some of those comments you see in there are some of the things that Elizabeth identified, and most of those are actually addressed in the drawings. So there just needs to be some coordination to close out some of those narrative type questions before those are submitted to the DES.
Okay, thank you. Allison?
Yeah, no, on one page, it says, 425 in our packet, it says, in consultation with the Portsmouth Conservation Commission, it was determined no local mitigation projects are currently available. I don't ever remember.
No,
hearing
that's
anything
not
about that.
correct.
Yeah, that was the one I got.
Yeah, no, yes, that's a correction that needs to be made. Yeah, there hasn't been any prior correspondence.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or? Yes.
You partially addressed this in the narrative, but the site is obviously so vulnerable to sea level rise, and I know you've got taken some steps around the surge house, but I mean, the pool itself, was there any conversation about elevating it? Or is
Yeah,
that just so
unfortunately not,
expensive?
because right now,
Yeah.
the pool elevation is approximately elevation 7.5, which is actually below, right now it's below the 100-year flood elevation, which is elevation 8. So unfortunately, it's vulnerable to flooding. It will be continually, prone to flooding in the future, obviously, with sea level rise. It's potentially vulnerable. But it would just be cost prohibitive to reconstruct a facility of this size. It would be, tens of millions of dollars to completely reconstruct this entire pool at a higher elevation. We are elevating the pump house. So right now, the existing pump house, that finished floor is at the same elevation of the pool deck. So that pump house is vulnerable to flooding, but the new pump house will be elevated up, 2 feet above the 100-year flood elevation to protect those pool systems from flooding. So it will just be, the pool itself would be, subject to flooding, but all the mechanical systems that are associated with that should survive a flood event. There would need to be obviously cleaning and removal of sediment from the pool, and if there was some shoreline erosion, that would need to be repaired. But we envision that the pool, again, the pool mechanicals, should survive a 100-year flood event.
Maybe it'll be the saltwater pool again.
I was gonna say, all the more reason to make it a saltwater pool.
I was thinking the same thing.
And it should be known that the new pool house design addressed that. That was significantly, it was raised. And just as a historical note, we did see evidence that the pool the river has overwhelmed the pool before. It has happened. It filled the pool, I think it was 76, 73. Yeah.
It's probably wintertime. Is that true?
What's that?
Is it in the wintertime or the fall, like a time when the pool is closed anyway?
It was the blizzard, the famous blizzard.
Yeah, blizzard of
Yeah.
78, is that? It was.
So it could have been, that was the biggest one, most recently, yeah.
Yeah, it certainly, it took it over, for sure.
I just want to add that I told them to proceed with the draft because they're trying to get through the process, and DES permit can take a long time, and rather than waiting another month to come back to the commission, they wanted to get, comments to DES, but if there's specific things that you think are missing or whatever, but I was hoping they could get a recommendation at least through from the draft, which we've done in the past in terms of getting the comments to DES, who ultimately has the decision-making.
Okay.
But if there's specific things you want them to bring back, I can bring back and report back on those, or whoever you want
How do the commissioners want to proceed? Do you want to do a motion and then discuss, or do we want to? We've done that before. Do a motion either to postpone or whatever. I mean, I kind of see it as, there definitely would need to be some conditions in here if we were to approve it, but.
I'm not going to approve it as is. So that's.
We'll make a motion.
Because you feel like it should be moved completely? Is that your position?
Well, I think that there are a lot of things that could be done that aren't being addressed here. And I think this is throwing money at a problem that ultimately isn't addressing the larger issues that we all face.
Postponing probably won't help that, though.
No, but at least we'll be able to see what it is that they have left out.
But in terms of they're here to hear about the impacts of the pool in terms of the wetland permit. And it's not a policy decision, it's really about the impacts in terms of a wetland permit. That's what they're trying to get feedback on. And that's what the state's looking for.
Yeah, but isn't part of our mission not just to look at
Well, I would say it's to review what's before you, and based on that, what's before you, it's whether it meets, what you think the interpretation of the state wetland permit would be. In terms of policy, I think there's different ways to go about how the city handles policy, but I don't necessarily think that,
if
voting on
it's
the
just
permit.
looking at the close micro thing, you can go down a lot of bad roads by just saying, well, this is only in our purview. It's like sometimes people, one needs to step back, even though, and being a conservation commission, I know we've got this small parameter, but the New Hampshire Conservation Commissions are not so small, and I don't know why we have, I need to do a deeper dive, but I'm kind of curious as to why we have such limited, whatever. Is it really there, or is it are these limitations, have they been sort of forced upon us, and they're not really, like somebody says, oh, you're not supposed to do that. It's like, oh, well, maybe we are allowed to.
Well, I guess
It's in the ordinance.
if you separate it in terms of the city's wetland permits and the state wetland permit, they're two different things. And in terms of the city's wetland permits, you really are restricted to what the ordinance allows, and your job is to interpret the ordinance for the city and make a recommendation to the planning board. In terms of the state wetland permit, I think the role of the commission is to try to interpret the state regulations in terms of how that permit's going to affect the city with your understanding of the state permit regulations. The state's going to ultimately decide based on their own regulations, just like you decide based on your own regulations on your wetland permits. But I think to go into whether a pool should be built here or not, or whether they should put solar panels on it. Those are things that are good policy things that we should think about as a community, but they don't necessarily fall in line with what the purview of a wetland permit or a state wetland permit are. And that doesn't mean they're not important comments to give to the people, but I guess in terms of the decision of whether it should be approved or not, I guess I feel like those should be based on what the rules are around what people are asked of when they submit a wetland permit.
They do not have to come to us for a CUP for this.
They don't need a city wetland permit because we don't have a jurisdictional area in this part of the city, right?
So in speaking from the wetlands permit and the recommendations we make for approval or non-approval and the reasons we give why, they are totally confined to certain things that are even more strict than ours on their end of being able to deny something, so.
DES you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, it's
So
the
it's not like-
legislature and that comes up with that, and the rules are written, and so we could make a recommendation, but
Well, I'm just thinking of like, Allison's, it's a historic pool, but it's like, we can't hang on to history if we're all going to be underwater. And hanging on to history, I mean, plenty of old, wonderful buildings have been torn down in downtown Portsmouth because they want to put up something new. So I honor the fact that it's got a history, and that's really cool. I didn't know about that. But it's also like, but does it make sense to put a whole lot of money into repairing something? So I'm not even just talking about our jurisdictional thing. It's sort of like,
No, but there are other avenues that we need to go down in order to address that issue.
Right.
And this is not the place.
Yeah.
But the reason that I'm not going to vote for it is because I feel it's incomplete. I can't say what's not there because I don't know what's not there.
Yeah.
I need to read it.
Yeah,
And-
and I'm not objecting,
And I think there's misinformation by stating that the Conservation Commission said there was no area to mitigate. They haven't put anything in there about trees, and although we can stipulate it, I still don't feel that it's a complete application.
Elizabeth, did you want to expand on some of the missing items?
Why don't you,
you have to come up, sorry. Just introduce yourself, thanks.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Oliver from Normando Associates. I'm the wetland specialist who's been assembling this permit. I do apologize that this permit is not in a completed state. We did have to assemble this permit rather hastily. I do realize that perhaps a big glaring missing item from this permit application is the resource information, which I'm sure everyone has noticed. Part of that is I am not a certified wetland scientist as of yet. I do not have a stamp. The person who is certified, who delineated all these resources, has been unavailable to assist me with working this up. So I'm still waiting on getting information from him to complete this permit application. And given the short notice, I wasn't able to get him to help me with that. In terms of additional information, much of it is related to determining the compensatory mitigation, being sure that the ARM fund payment will be accepted by NHDES. I've had a great deal of difficulty getting a hold of them on the phone and getting email responses, and even talking about trying to coordinate a pre-application meeting, which we really should do in this case, along with a site walk. I'm just not getting much feedback or response. So I apologize that the application is not more complete. But if there are questions, I would be very happy to try and answer them to the best of my ability. And I do apologize that we had a comment in there regarding the Conservation Commission having no ongoing projects. Are there projects that might be occurring in the municipality that would qualify for something like this?
There might be, but we don't have an opportunity to look at it.
Okay.
well, the impact is really removing the pool house and planting turf, right?
Yes, that, and also putting in the outfall off the north side of the pool, which will involve installing a riprap apron on rocky shoreline.
Mhm.
And that strikes me as a very specific impact that I would be, I don't know if there are likely to be projects that would
I
cover
don't know of any
those
place we
kinds
could
of.
remove an outfall or recommend removal of an outfall. Usually they're more putting them in to deal with additional stormwater.
Or restore one, maybe?
Restore one, yeah. There could be some restoration.
Yeah. So,
I mean, what's the time frame for getting this in? Are you up against the clock on other things, or?
Yeah, we've committed to the community to not close the pool at all. So the construction, this is a very significant construction project that requires we have to build it, this work has to occur in winter conditions. So, the importance of the pool remaining open is paramount. So the project is, 100% designed and ready to go to bid. We want to get it out to bid. The bidding environment right now actually is looking better than it did 6 months ago. But then we have to contract with someone to start as soon as the pool closes. So yeah, that's coming fast.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming fast. So the winter months, and then we are hoping that the winter isn't so severe that we have to bring in ground heaters and so yeah, tough project with a tough window and tough conditions to build in.
so and you're still trying to do like a pre-construction meeting, so, I mean, we just had one that submitted it at the last minute to us that was in process with DES and was doing pre-construction. It seems like there's a way to do it in tandem a little bit, waiting for our response.
Do you mean doing pre-construction application or pre-application meetings? Because you have to schedule those and you need to have a completed permit to schedule them, ideally.
Right, but I think what Barbara's getting at is the comments from the Conservation Commission are part of the review process for DES, and it might be possible to postpone a month, get more complete information to this group, and not hold you up in terms of the fact that you haven't got a pre-construction meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they've done that before, so.
I guess I'm just, hearing what people are saying. It looks like they want more information, and
Certainly.
we thought it was a little further along. That's partly my fault for saying come ahead at this point, but I know you guys were eager to get it going, and we've had projects that are really close. They just need a few things, but the resource information is pretty key, and I don't know. You risk having the commission not recommend approval, which isn't going to necessarily change the decision on DES's end. It's more how it's going to look, or getting the full information and then have the full information in front of the commission to review it. I guess that's where we're at.
Seems to be. Anybody want to do a motion? Allison?
I'll make a motion that we postpone the standard dredge and fill application for 99 Pierce Island Road.
Anybody want a second? Sam? No?
I'll second.
Oh, she got it. Sorry. I thought I saw Sam's hand move, so that's why I did that. Sorry. Okay, any discussion? I think we discussed it. You guys know what you need to get back to us with, and
Yeah, we'll certainly aim to try and have something ready for you guys by the next Conservation Commission meeting, I would assume. Yes, that is our plan.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, vote, roll call?
Yep. Samantha?
Wait, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Just to add, that we get time to look at what potential other projects we have in the city that we could use what would have gone to the ARM fund for us. I don't know if that's something Peter looks at or they look. I don't really know how that works, but I think that's a crucial part when they come back too.
We could try to coordinate with that before they come back, and then maybe see where we're at. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, roll call, vote?
Sam?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Abigail?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes. Motion passes. We had one more on our agenda. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Thank you.
Which requested to postpone.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yep, sorry, I thought you did. but I have it here.
Oh, you
It-
have it in the
an
new one.
updated agenda, yep, sorry about that.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion to postpone 333 Borthwick Ave?
I'll make a motion that we postpone 333 Borthwick Avenue at the permit holders, or the permit requestees' request.
I'll second that.
I'll second.
All those to the August meeting?
To the August.
August meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, Sam?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Yes.
Abigail? Allison?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes. And other business was just to really quickly to report out that we met. It was Jess, Sam, Lynn, me, and Kate, and Ted. And we had a productive meeting, right? And Sam volunteered to put together kind of a bit of a plan to look at what our objectives are and how we get to them. And we were going to focus on homeowners and companies that do yard work for organic care outreach. I don't know
Commercial.
if you guys want to say anything else, Sam or anybody? Since Sam, you volunteered to do stuff.
And just
Yeah, I don't have anything to say about that. I do have one thing I wanted to say about the pool.
Okay, I'll just finish this one and then we'll go. So we're going to meet again on July 27th at 3:30.
Yep.
Whoever can come, wants to participate in this, we're going to look at a draft that Sam puts out and then discuss that and then discuss who else to include in this process. And I won't go into any more detail. So, all right, yes, Sam.
I was just going to say, now that we kind of have a month postponement on the pool, do we want, as a Conservation Commission, to write a letter? I don't know if it'd be to the City Council or the Planning Board, just talking about more sustainability improvements to the pool?
Or even to the climate, whatever the sustainability committee is. I don't know if Jessica, you've got any
Yeah.
advice about
I
how
think
to-
it'd be more the council, because the
Yeah, okay.
sustainability committee doesn't set policy.
Yeah,
It's the
okay.
council.
Yes, I think that would be a good suggestion, just to start making them think, or encouraging people to start thinking about new projects this way. I liked your idea about solar panels. I'm curious to know the cost piece of having saltwater pool versus chemical pool, why, especially if the river's gonna be flooding it anyway.
Right.
It's like-
Just need the jellyfish filter and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Different kind of jellyfish filter.
And to Allison's point, I mean, if they're spending all this money to revamp this, have they even considered a different location?
Right.
So do we draft a letter and then send a draft out to everybody or something, or what's the best procedure? Not too painful.
Yeah, I guess however you guys want to proceed. I mean, you probably want to do it. It's hard to do it before the next meeting without having a meeting to review it. So you probably have to review it at the next meeting, I would think.
Well,
unless you-
I think
unless you
that's
put
too
a-
late. I
unless you
think that
put a
we need to
special
get it
meeting
out
together.
immediately. I was planning on writing the mayor myself, but
If you want to draft something and we'll.
I'll be glad to
Yeah.
Okay.
draft something, and
We
then I'll
could-
send it to Isaac, and
Yeah.
Isaac can send it out.
Yeah, I was going to say, could we do it through email? Yeah.
We can send the letter out through email. In terms of what people think about it, I think we might need to call a special meeting, which we could do
Okay.
even next week.
Yep.
So if you want, we can try to schedule that.
Like do a Zoom one maybe, or whatever.
Yep, we could do that.
We're going to do a site
Well, we can't
visit.
do it by Zoom if we have a quorum, right?
Oh,
So-
okay.
If we're going to do a site visit anyway, I wonder if there's a way to combine all these different things.
I'll think about that.
Yeah,
The site visit's in the field, though, but
yeah.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I second.
Is everybody roll call?
No, yeah, we're good.
I don't think we
Yes.
have to do